welcome to the latest Q&A video. We ask the questions on Twitter and we answer them over here on YouTube. The first one today comes from Crystal Summerhill, the Great Gherkin, who would like to know if you could change any storyline in AEW, current storyline, AEW or WWE, what would it be and how would you improve upon it? Michael Hamlet, what have you got?
Is this an obvious answer? I think I'm going to jump to the Jon Moxley one. We did a podcast last week, myself and Sidge. It was Sidge's brilliant idea to go through the entire roster and try and work out narratively if Jon Moxley, the current character, would be angry with them.
Yes.
And you get yourself so tangled up because there's so many mixed messages what Jon Moxley is delivering. I'm not like a baby. I don't need it like spelled out for me, but it's so cryptic and it seems so vague in tone that I think it's already losing the thread a little bit. Yeah. We're recording this right after Dynamite where the Hurt Syndicate formally debuted with Bobby Lashley being there. Like the surprise that wasn't really a surprise. They're the coolest heel stable in AEW. They did a beatdown that had all of security trying to swarm the ring and couldn't. Notice that never happens when Jon Moxley does his beatdown. It's just wrestlers. Like, it's just little stupid wrestlers. So the security guards are now more over than the mid-card, thanks to Jon Moxley's domination of this bit. It's just not working. It doesn't feel super well thought through either. Like, I get the premise and I get the idea, like the AEW's worth fighting for and all that sort of thing. Back to basics, personal issues, draw money stuff, and this is not that.
You want to be pointing at that Jerry Jarrett sign, don't you?
Yeah.
I was actually going to go for that one as well because I think that the argument that it needs bigger names standing up for AEW is very, very fair. Look, it does make sense to have people like Evil Uno in the Dark Order and who've been there from day one, and the likes of Orange Cassidy and super loyal company people. Daniel Garcia's just re-signed, right?
Yeah.
So, and is a very promising young wrestler. Makes sense to have them involved, but at the same time, if you're to receive this as an existential threat, I think you need Kenny Omega's going to come back and jump into this at some point, and it looks like they're probably going to turn the Young Bucks babyface at some point and throw them in there too. But it does need those names, and I would start working towards that now. I would start that by telling this story of AEW needs Kenny, it needs the Bucks, it needs Hangman, whoever, name a big name wrestler, Samoa Joe, it needs these people. I would start transitioning to that sooner rather than later. But to go to a WWE one, today we've had the news that Rhea Ripley is injured. She X-ray, her jaw's a bit messed up. That's a legit X-ray apparently doing the rounds. I would use that as an opportunity to pivot away from a feud that I think here's one of them, the biggest Fed fans in the world would say is a bit long in the tooth.
Yeah, definitely.
In Rhea versus Liv. I would pivot away from that completely. When Rhea's ready to come back, what I would do is instead I would resolve that by having Rhea beat the crap out of Dom in a match.
That's the match. That is the WrestleMania match, if they can do it.
Yeah, get Liv on something else with Io Sky or someone like that. Rhea can come back, just paste Dominic in a squash. I think that's a good one to pivot away from. But let us know in the comment section what current storyline you would change, how you would do it, and all of that good stuff.
This is the one coming from Roger Kirby, at Roger M. Kirby, and it's very timely. It's been massive in the news this week. He asks, with the news relating to WWE launching WWE ID contracts for some indies and AEW continuing to hoover up other promotion/indie talent, what is it going to take to stop a complete homogenization of pro wrestling?
Yeah, so we haven't really covered the ID story too much on the news. It kind of broke at it was like a difficult time of day for us to put a video out, so I thought we'd put it in here. Good question. Hot button topic for sure. I think that, so the positives of the WWE ID scheme, right, are it's great for WWE, right?
Yeah.
They're going to effectively have dibs on whoever they give these ID certifications to from these schools. So they're going to have like first refusal on a lot of indie talent, and they're going to be able to bring them into the system earlier and develop them their way earlier and theoretically set them up for success. Smoother. It's also good for whoever gets signed to this thing, right? Because they'll have a guarantee, presumably, like the ones who make it will end up with a guaranteed contract, and these things are good overall. But for the wider wrestling ecosystem, I think that wrestling history tells us that this will not end well for the smaller groups that WWE is partnering with. UK indie scene, Evolve, Territories. There's dozens and dozens of examples.
They don't play well with us.
Like they're doing it to further themselves. They're not trying to better the scene. And I think if you bought into that line of the PR statement, you're probably going to get a bit of a rude awakening when it comes to this stuff. In general, the wider homogenization of wrestling, I think if you are super into the WWE house style, I don't think it's a problem. Like, if you love that brand of wrestling and are super connected with it, then you probably don't give a damn, right? But for me, as a contrarian idiot with niche tastes, for me, it's not a positive on the whole. I like that diversity of styles, and I think that this isn't a hot indie period in the US, but I think that by introducing a scheme like this, you are strangling the opportunity of a period like that ever emerging again, really. So how do you stop it? I honestly don't know. At the same time as AEW hoover up a lot of wrestlers as well, I think that it's going to take a wider kind of counter movement to both major US companies at the moment. How does that come about? You need another perfect set of circumstances like Tony Khan had when he was starting AEW, but it's a really big story, this.
It is. I am slightly more, I wouldn't say optimistic. I'm certainly not optimistic about the state of the indie scene in the wake of this, because WWE will absolutely destroy a portion of it, just as they have. And always, this you have to sort of understand history lest you be doomed to repeat it. And if, as Murray has pointed out, if you go in expecting this to be some sort of great revolution for any indie scene, pick your favourite bit of it, it will not be. At least not in the short term, as WWE figures out what it really wants from this. Maybe it'll strip mine it and get bored, who knows. However, I am a little bit more positive about this not being just end of days and end times for indie wrestling. You pointed out the circumstances that led to the formation of AEW, and I think that's historically what does happen in wrestling. We just don't have time frames for when these things take place. Yes, there is now the added bonus/threat of Tony Khan being the type of promoter that will give an indie standout TV exposure maybe too soon, and then maybe kill some of their appeal or aura, or maybe get them before they're necessarily ready for the spot they're in. It's a different kind of problem/paycheck for an indie wrestler to have.
Yeah.
However, just like I would say what occurred with something like Ring of Honor in the early days of WWE monopolising things in 2002, just like ultimately everything that led to sort of 2015, 2016 into the formation of AEW in the late 2010s, eventually wrestling and sort of niche wrestling scenes are a bit like water trying to break through cracks in a house. It will find a way. It will just take longer and longer and longer if the foundations are stronger. WWE's foundations have never been stronger. We've never had as strong as number 2 as we do in AEW. So it's going to be harder than ever for that water to burst through. But it will happen. It might just take time. We don't yet know. I don't think we can currently see the circumstances exist for the next sort of indie, sort of groundswell. But it will be there again. It's cockroaches and pro wrestling, man. And maybe Twinkies, as I understand, because they don't biodegrade. They're the only things that survive in multiple apocalypses.
They don't even dissolve in your stomach. Twinkies, I hear. They just go straight through you. So don't eat them.
I'm going for lunch for one. I want one.
Oh wow! After that description, you're going to
Makes me want one more.
Fair enough. Jim Blade has been on.
What a legend.
Jim Blade would
Speaking of indie worker revolutions,
legend.
What a legend.
He would like to know: is Jon Moxley the new Ric Flair? They seem to trust him with the big belt anytime they need a steady hand on the rudder, a la WCW. And do you think that Mox would appreciate the comparison? Probably not a guy you want to be compared to in certain ways. No. But as a pro wrestler, what do you think?
I like that. Ric Flair was sort of the go-to guy. And I would say it's funny now to read about it, obviously, considering that there were multiple times where Ric Flair was accused of being past his peak. But as sort of early in our minds as the early 90s, people were saying, well, Ric Flair's washed, but WCW have got nobody else. Jon Moxley obviously isn't washed, but there are some times where it feels like AEW hasn't got anybody they quite trust, and that was how Ric Flair kind of constantly found himself back in that spot. So yeah, I do actually get that. And one of the reasons beyond the match quality being of a certain standard that Ric Flair was trusted in that role was that historically he had drawn well, and that is currently what else Jon Moxley can lean on. I don't know if we will necessarily see the peak business performer that Jon Moxley was in 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
But AEW haven't got many other wrestlers that you could consider bona fide needle movers at the moment, so he's as good as any. If anything, Ric Flair eventually became, in that WCW spot, kind of became maybe the best like B-level guy they had as they were trying to create new main eventers. Maybe Jon Moxley is trying to be that. Maybe long term, when he says like, I'm thinking about AEW 5 years from now, 10 years from now, maybe that's what he wants, is that he wants to be the best. Like, he's no longer going to be an A-level guy, but the best B1 you have.
Yeah, agreed. I think that, well, I mean, just look at the times they've gone to this guy. Times of real crises, right? Like the pandemic. World champion Jon Moxley, babyface, amazing. Reminding you to phone your mother and all this good stuff, and like making you actually feel excited about one of the grimmest times that we've lived through as like a collective. The CM Punk debacle blows up several times. Jon Moxley, here we go again, world champion. And now, in this kind of identity crisis era, we're running the meta storyline and the heart and soul of the promotion and all this stuff. So yeah, he's clearly someone they see in that role, for sure. And I imagine a lot of his current direction is a degree of appeasement to him as well. There's been suggestions that he's a bit burned out on the trappings of Western televised wrestling, and this is kind of...
You can see it as well, can't you?
Yeah, for sure. Like, he was definitely going through the motions there for a good year or so. And look, this is one of my Mount Rushmore wrestlers, but his past year prior to this wasn't the most inspiring of his career, I think I'd say. So I think it's a really good question as well. A really good comparison, sorry. And Jon Moxley's the ace of AEW. And the TV is the ace of this studio. He's the guy they go back to over and over again. And it works. It works for them.
And then that is where the comparison ends.
Absolutely.
You'd like to think.
Yeah.
Jules, thanks for the question at Angel Kitten 32001. We're actually having a conversation about this very subject last night on X. When do you think major US promotions will have at least one non-male voice on commentary? Not a guest wrestler, but an actual full-time commentator.
Yeah, so it's a really good question because it's a very, very male-dominated field on television. WWE went there with Renee for a while on NXT and on the main roster. Was it Raw? Yeah.
Yeah, Raw and NXT.
Yeah. And in fairness to Renee, I think she's an incredible broadcaster. Commentary, not her favourite thing to do in the world. And I don't think she was as great at commentary as she was at doing the backstage interviews and being the mean gene of this generation, basically. But I think that when it comes to people who have stood out in this field to me over the past few years, Veda Scott really stands out. When she was doing her spots for AEW, I thought she was absolutely tremendous as an analyst, and it baffles me somewhat that they didn't find a bigger role for her. I know it's quite a crowded commentary booth in AEW, right? You've got Excalibur, Taz, Tony Schiavone, I'm missing really important Jim Ross, Ian Riccaboni, and Caprice as well, like loads of people you can call on, Nigel as well, obviously. I know it's a crowded booth, but she was so good, and I think it was an opportunity to change things for the better in that regard. So I don't really know if I can sit here and say it'll be X, Y, or Z amount of years before it happens, but I think that Veda Scott should be doing this on TV for a major company every week. And I think they're kind of out of excuses for not doing it, really.
Yeah, she's I was having this exact conversation with Jules last night, and she used the phrase, obviously, in terms of like young female fans, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And there's that key sort of importance of representation, even if it's on a smaller scale. For someone like Veda Scott right now, she's like simultaneously like changing the game and not being given the chance to change the game. She is the sort of main female voice of independent wrestling. You can find her on multiple indie shows. She's done stuff for New Japan. As you say, there was the AEW tournament, which looked like a way in that never came to be. So she's absolutely the best around. And yet, with a TV platform that close, isn't necessarily being given the opportunity to take it quite to that next level. So it's amazing what she's already done, and yet what there is still left to do for Veda Scott. I also think hit and miss, but every now and then, NXT really had something with Beth Phoenix, I think, for a little bit of a while. I don't necessarily think her chemistry with Mauro Ranallo was the best. And I think that, like, they kind of like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't a confrontational sort of collision, but they did sort of collide as commentators on occasion. And again, that kind of like follows on from Renee Paquette having time in NXT and it being more of a developmental brand. So theoretically, they're developing their performers there, not just to be wrestlers, but if you're a handy announcer or a commentator or whatever, they'll kind of find your skill in that too. But yeah, it's why we talk about representation across all levels. Unless it's there, then you kind of have to keep fighting to get it, unfortunately. The narrative shouldn't be about a fight. The narrative should be about skilled people in roles that they deserve and stuff like that. So
absolutely.
Here's to more of that, I think.
It's me next,
it's
right?
you next, otherwise I'm going to do it all over again.
John Gowan's been on. Big John would like to know, you are starting your own company. Which 3 wrestlers would you start it with? We kind of did this the other week, but with 10 wrestlers. This is with 3 wrestlers from any era. So anyone, not just current people. Who's 3/4 of your Mount Rushmore, Michael Hamflett, for starting this new company?
Bret Hart, please. Best there is, will be, works every single spot on the card. Greatest heel, greatest babyface, can work tags, can work singles, is the tightest wrestler. He'd also be an awesome coach. You'd be mad not to pick him. After that,
he's boring.
Do you know what? She's not had the best year. So it kind of goes against maybe thinking, you're bringing in an all-rounder. But I will still take Mercedes Moné, please. And I'll take 2015 Sasha Banks, seeing as you're allowed any kind of version of any wrestler you want, because the in-ring was guaranteed, the confidence in the character development was out the ass, and the star quality has been proven time and time again. It is not a perfect time for as we speak and as we record, but there's been too much good. Like, there has been too many moments, too many sort of like great, iconic kind of like big stage times to not think that she's completely finished. So I love more of what I remember of Sasha Banks and Mercedes Moné to worry that this bad run is not making it worth it.
Yeah.
And then one more to sort of round out in terms of wanting to get as much from as little. 3 people. I'm going to take Bobby Heenan. Again, somebody that like can commentate, can like flesh out stuff for the heels that need him, can be a great manager, but can also wrestle. Fantastic bumper. Like, I'm looking to get as much sort of economically from my 3 choices, so we'll take those 3.
One of the greatest performances in Royal Rumble history, him in 1992,
exactly,
I think. And from just him sitting doing commentary, panicking the whole night about Ric Flair's spot, getting the title. Very familiar wrestlers to the audience. I'm going to pick number 1, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Top star, could do everything. Blew my wig off when we see people online going, Steve Austin wasn't even that good.
Strange culture.
People just be posting stuff these days. I would say, look, the thing is, like, almost everything he did post neck break was incredible as well. But just before his body really started to.
That was a hell of a mechanic.
He's for me the WWE GOAT. He could do everything, a magnetic star power. If there's any way we could capture the lightning in the bottle of him and McMahon again, I would somehow find a way to do that. I would pick the man era Becky Lynch to anchor the women's division. You cannot argue with that level of crowd connection, and she brought it to the WrestleMania main event for the very first time. Trendsetter, can do everything. I thought you were
Trent Seven there. It was like your third
Trent
choice.
Seven,
That's the first person she's going to work. And Trent Seven, like, if he beats Becky Lynch, you get Steve Austin, but we'll have to just see.
Trent Seven hanging out in the shed. That's what you would do. My third roster pick is because you picked Bret Hart for the same reason as I'm picking Terry Funk. Okay, Terry could do everything as well. Face, heel, tag wrestler, singles wrestler, enhancement mid-card guy, comedy joker guy, genuine world champion quality main eventer, best seller in wrestling history in my opinion. He could do everything a million times over. He would work in any era of wrestling. You could put if you could take Terry Funk in a time warp, you could have a great match with George Hackenschmidt and Bobby Fish in 1930. Indeed. Or you could take him all the way to the modern day and he'd have a great match with Will Ospreay. You could do it all. That's my pick, but let us know yours in the comments.
You could even have like a shotgun Saturday night bar fight with Steve Austin's already on your card, isn't
Boom,
it? So,
there you are.
Steve Fasso at WooGuy8286. Thank you very much, Steve. Always love your contributions. We like to take the piss out of the dead man and the game Triple H. But what do you think, guys? What do you guys think their best match is? And it doesn't have to be against each other either. Well, thank you for that one, Steve, because they never had a good one against each other ever. One of the WrestleMania ones, all right, I suppose.
Dead Man.
Yeah, Dead Man and Triple H. What are their best matches for you?
For me, Dead Man, Batista, Cage, Hell in a Cell. Before Punk Drew, it to me was the last Hell in a Cell that that truly felt like a
Right.
career-shortening horror show. I love it. I mean, I'm a big Batista mark anyway. I love big blundering powerhouses. So I'm a bit biased towards it, but it's a subjective question. That's my favorite Undertaker match as well.
All right.
I love the corny WrestleMania Shawn Michaels matches. I adore those pantomime epics. But this was an ugly, horrible experience. That's the kind of... I'm a real good guy at parties. You can tell. Triple H Cactus Jack Royal Rumble match.
Nice,
I had that VHS when I was a kid, like 12 years old, watching the backstage footage of Triple H getting hunks of wood pulled out of his leg at the end.
Yeah.
So another disgusting match. Those are my two favourites from those guys.
I will take The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels from Hell in a Cell. He did his best work realistically with Shawn, and that's the best of the lot. It's a horror movie come to life. It's Shawn Michaels running in fear. The roof is on the cage for a reason. It's to keep the fight in and keep everybody else out. And when it does leave the building, it does so like perfectly logically. Shawn has, in desperation, beat up a cameraman that he's landed on top of. So the medics have arrived, and then he's like, "Oh, I'll take the door then." And then that's how they end up outside. He blades in midair. The Undertaker lays a beating of all beatings, and the dead man's brother arrives, kills the business. But yeah, so an incredible, like Kane's best night, the whole deal. And he's supposed to blow the bloody door off. So yeah, I love all that. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect, and it's still only the second best match of WWS 1997. That's how good that year was. Triple H, he has had like, I don't know, fair play to him, like 25 years. He's had like, I would say nearly 5 good matches. The Rock and Triple H from Judgment Day 2000 for me. It's a better Iron match than Bret and Shawn. It's a better Iron match than pretty much everyone WWE has ever done, maybe. I still think it's my favourite. They go hell for that 60 minutes. It's one of the more creative ones. Triple H takes a DQ to earn 2 pins. He's the best in the world in the year 2000. Like, Triple H was that damn good for one damn year. I've said it before. Like, that was the one year where he didn't have to be... Like, you watch him bumping against a Taka Michinoku or a Brooklyn Brawler because he was actually securing himself for once in his dumbass career. Everything he was saying was actually true. He was over. He was the top star. He was the best all-rounder in the entire business. And he was going out with The Rock, who was also probably at his in-ring peak then as well. Like, it's physically impressive. Their bodies are like luminous pink by the end because they've gone so hard for that hour. And to fold in the Undertaker himself at the question, it's the return of the dead man on his back. He's finally going to be his true self at the end. He's got his big leather jacket. It's who doesn't love that return? Like, it's awesome.
With the miscued music. And the shot of the infinite shot on the Titan.
Las Vegas with those little scary girls and Kid Rock before it was body slamming Democrats. Vote next week, whichever way you vote. Don't vote for Kid Rock. But yeah.
I don't think he's on the ballot.
I've seen him at some rallies. I've seen some stuff. But yeah, Judgment Day 2000's Iron Man match is perfect. Perfect of the era stuff for me, that.
There you go.
60 incredible minutes.
There you go. Next question comes from Cole, who would like to know, which underutilized star do you think that Papa H should give the next big push to, and how would you do it? My vote, if it's not already too late, is Shayna Baszler. Just have her snap and let her be Bob Holly. Give her the belt and have her beat everybody. Underused stars, who you pushing?
I don't know.
Who you pushing?
It's a good shout, that. It's like Shayna Baszler, and you could like kind of cycle through the women's division and try and find countless dead careers for a division that just not has been well looked after. Do you know what I'm going to go for? Because I'm kind of getting sick of seeing one too many false starts to them, and it's interesting that we record this in the wake of Bobby Lashley debuting for AEW, because the Pride was one of the last failed attempts to get the Street Profits over. Yes. I'm sick of seeing it, and you know, it's not even at the point where you could say like, oh, like Montez Ford is ready for a singles run. Like, no, both of them were clearly they were doing that brass ring stuff where you level up and you level up and you level up and you're supposed to be like rewarded with these opportunities, and they're just not forthcoming. It's mad to me that the Street Profits had probably their 2 best runs in 2019 NXT and then pandemic era WWE. The crowds have come back and the push hasn't, and I just think that's inexcusable. Like, Montez Ford's athleticism and everything he does when he like has the opportunity to get matches over, like, is then not rewarded in the form of them getting any kind of run. The act never went cold. WWE went cold on the act, and I don't think that's good enough, especially not when the product's as hot as it is. Like, this is the time we've, like, the best example of like just trying stuff is with like a Bronson Reed on Raw. You can get your lower card guys as over as they've ever been. Yeah. So how are you finding wrestlers that were over in a far worse era and cooling them off? I don't get it, and I don't like it.
Yeah, it's a peculiar behaviour for sure. I know they're on TV every week and they are featured, but I'm going to go American made. I think they should be one of the biggest things in the company. I just remember how perfectly immaculate the debut of the Creed brothers was on the main roster. The way they rolled that out with the vignette and then the showcase match and everything else. I think that, look, you needed somebody to help get the Wyatt Six over early on. I would rather they use somebody else. It's just a group of wrestlers that I'm very fond of. And, they're featured. It's not like they're being buried every week or anything silly like that. But they're really great and they should be like centerpieces.
Wins and losses in WWE do matter again, and they're on the wrong end of a lot of losses. So I think that's like the stats don't exactly hold up to their quality and ability.
Don't lie.
Who have we got next? Mark Smith at MT Smithy 84. Hey boys, no boring obvious answers here. So outside of the world title wins, what wrestling moments in 2024 left you warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum? For me, it's Motor City Machine Guns versus DIY on WWE TV because I'm old enough to remember when that couldn't happen.
Yeah, it was it's nice seeing Sabin and Shelley getting the bag, the big mainstream bag. The only thing that sucks is the music. Def Rebel. What are you gonna do? Nigel, coming out in the oh my God, what on earth is the name of the match? The Casino Gauntlet match.
Yeah.
At Wembley. I had no idea this was coming whatsoever. I thought that someone had pressed the wrong button when effing in the bushes hit straight away. Like, what are you on about? Actually, I kind of quasi had it spoiled in a way. I didn't see it coming in that match, but like one of my friends who doesn't know wrestling, he just totally doesn't watch wrestling, was at the show and tweeted a photo of a Tron saying Nigel McGuinness. I was like, I had no idea who this guy is, but he got a massive pop. I figured it was just the announcer coming out for the beginning of the show. So when he came out in the match, I was like, what the hell? How did this go? And like, obviously knowing his story, having his dream ripped away from him in the most just brutal fashion imaginable. Him getting to come back and do that at Wembley and then have the Danielson match, which was about the best version of that match you could hope for in 2024, given the passage of time. Really heartwarming stuff, the stuff you just get behind.
Yeah, the gauntlet was the one that jumped out to me. Just like an impossible flurry of like Royal Rumble pops in the era where the Royal Rumble itself has lost that magic. Like AEW has kind of managed to just take that and like wrap it into its own little format. So the gauntlet was perfect for that at Wembley. Not least when Jeff Jarrett like rattled the acoustic equalizer around Hangman Page's head. But I'm going to go with as like a series of moments that were so tightly bound together that I was just in like a constant state of rising euphoria. CM Punk ripping off the arm brace at WrestleMania to clip Drew's legs, to beat him up, only for Damian Priest music to hit, only for CM Punk to do the Judgment Day meme and turn over, and like the little wry smile that comes across his face as he realises what's happening. Then the Damian Priest cash in, and then the Judgment Day on the stage celebrating with him. Just like every bit of that scene, and then Drew McIntyre in the ring, sort of like head in hands, and the camera doing that zoom to Punk, who sat cross-legged on the table, just giving it that, and it's like, oh, this is goddamn money. Like I basically had a CM Punk WrestleMania moment when he was too injured to work the show. It was bliss on top of bliss on top of bliss on top of bliss. The fade is back, the power is back, and everything is cooking. Like it just made me feel alive. It's what the world, never mind wrestling, it's what, when the Fed is that goated, it's to me what the world should look like, and it was isolated within a stadium in Philadelphia.
You like WWE, don't you? You're fond of the product. I
have had the best 2 years of my goddamn life watching the power come back. I never thought it possible. We're in this golden age and I never want it to end.
And of course, WrestleMania 40, the second most devastating loss of Drew McIntyre's year after last night at Pataudry. Let's get to our next question on the video here. Alex Bruegel would like to know, good morning, fine gents. You must be watching the wrong channel, Alex. Not fine about us, but thank you. Who do you think will stop booking their respective shows first? Triple H or Tony Khan? And who could you see taking over after them? Have a great day.
Triple H, I'm going to say. WWE's hotter than AEW right now, so yeah, sort of common sense would be, oh well, one person is underperforming, they're going to be out of their job first. But No, that's not how this works anymore. Like, we kind of talk about all these uncharted waters at the moment. I keep kind of reiterating this point that we've never had such a strong number 2.
Yeah.
So at some point when like WWE does go cold, let's look then at what AEW does. Well, one thing that's going to happen when that day comes is that Tony Khan's still going to be in the chair. Like, whereas Triple H we've never had a WWE, a market leader, where results could determine somebody's role. Triple H has bosses, just like we all do. Their bosses have bosses. And when those graphs start to trend downwards after a certain period of time, Triple H will be assessed just like everybody else based on the cold, hard reality of capitalism, and there will be numbers. Now look, the man's maybe one of the shrewdest political operators ever. I'm not suggesting that he's going to be out on his ass, but they might do that kind of, here's a dated reference, they might do that Gerard Houllier, Roy Evans thing of just pushing him to one side while the next name that we don't even know might exist yet within the TKO umbrella suddenly just slides into that role. This is going to be early 90s WCW with more credible people. Jim Herd came in from a Pizza Hut. Like, that's why the wrestlers hated him, but that's why Turner thought, he's managed a big brand. WCW is a big brand, let's let him have a go. We've never had a WWE where such a massive change can occur. And Triple H, I think, eventually will be judged on results rather than family ties.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to give the exact same answer. Triple H has a boss, so by default, probably him. Do you imagine what they would do, like Dana White or something?
We don't even know who would give it to you. Give it Dana until the end of the season.
Yeah, Steve Sega, someone like that. Just get them in. As a devil's advocate, I think if it was Tony Khan, and it won't be because he's playing with house money, he's the boss, and he's very rich, as is his father. But if he were to go, like, he's been making, there've been little whispers about Bryan Danielson. And I think he would make a tremendous booker because he's head of the disciplinary committee, so he's clearly good with interpersonal dynamics, but he's also a wonderful pro wrestler who probably has great ideas. So it'd probably be pretty good. But you're not getting rid of Tony Khan anytime ever.
No, so yeah, it's which could be like a good news, bad news situation depending on which side of AEW you sit, I guess.
Both.
Last question today, which should have come earlier, so we're not going to end on quite the high note. We're going to go from the sublime of talking about our favourite moments to the ridiculous of the worst guy. At Real Graps in it, ask not you. At Real Graps in it. Ask the question, do you see Vince's entertainment company turn into a wrestling company? There are a lot of wrestlers who still speak highly about Vince, and unfortunately he has the money, power and connections with TV networks to get it on TV. Yeah, what's your sort of take on this?
Yeah, so we've spoken a bit about this on the news, but I wanted to get your opinion on the videos as well. I'll give you the cliff notes of mine. Yes, he will promote wrestling because everything else he has ever done that is not wrestling has been an abject failure that has cost him millions and millions of dollars, from the 2 NXFL attempts to the WBF to WWE New York to WWE Studios. At least that one still trades, I suppose.
Thank Kane for that one.
Yeah, like he spent.
Cena Weaver was the movie business personified.
See. Even though
see that 3-foot dick?
Even though he has spent the entirety of his career trying to differentiate himself from wrestling, I think it's about 6 months before he's booking a card with Brock Lesnar on top because people don't have scruples anymore, basically.
Yeah. Yes, like Vince McMahon is a promoter first, a marketeer. He's always about what he could. It's one of the reasons why I hated the word wrestling, is because I think he felt that it was beneath him as a sort of business impresario, a guy that could polish up any old turd and sell it to you like it was gold. Well, that certainly is like going to be Alpha Entertainment or whatever his next venture is, and it's impossible to imagine him not at least, even if it's some sort of like, you know, that thing that like Cody Rhodes was on, that like talent show, where it was like, what's the big thing you do?
Titan Games.
Yeah, like people firing dynamite out their arse, whatever it was. But it was like, well, it's like America's Got Talent, but you could do absolutely out, and it could be the biggest crazy stunt show. Like, even if that's Vince's brand, there will be a wrestling element of it, or a strongman element of it. He loves body guys, so even if they're just jacked and tanned, it's going to feature people like that. It's just not something. The WBF, you name checked, right? The XFL. These are things that he tried to like save and salvage by making them more like his brand of wrestling. So even when he wasn't doing it, like wrestling was kind of like feeding in because it's ultimately all he knew. And I can't see this happening without it. You will see something. You will see one person cut a promo. You will see one person perform whatever their wacky skill is, and you will think, He wants to put that in a ring.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to get that guy, like, sort of selling tickets to some sort of, like, combat show or something like that. Yeah. And I don't even think that's, like, a cynical take either. This is, of course, if he even gets the opportunity to promote it, because fingers crossed he's going to be tied up in a lot of legal bother for many months and years to come.
And he's already surrounding himself with a crack team of stooges.
Yeah, he's never going to be short of them.
No, he certainly isn't.
Here's Yes Men, the Netflix documentary told me. Oh.
And Netflix don't lie. Hey, thank you for joining us for this Q&A. We'll be back next week with another one. And if you enjoyed this video, check out this one right here. The algorithm thinks you're going to love it. Probably. Bye.